Well,
Fascinating.
I want to move on and talk about some examples, some of the most notable examples in history, because what we're talking about is a major movement in relatively modern history. The players are people we know, people that we've known through history recently, possibly even seen on television or in the news, not ancient figures that we have lots of documentation on. But we have writings that you've secured, that you have, that shows that they were in on this plan. And we're very slow and methodical in building this leadership. But one of the key points I know was the establishment by Cecil Rhodes of this Rhodes Scholarship. And if I remember right from your writing, it was a key point to raise up these kind of leaders to put in all of these key positions. And in fact, you even mentioned in your book that in this writing it talks about certain features of, they were looking for very intrepid kind of people that were pragmatists, that could sometimes be difficult with people, elitist in their own attitudes in dealing with people, and they looked for those kind of people to fill these roles. Can you comment on that and some of the real notable accomplishments that they've done that really furthered their agenda in recent history?
Yeah, the Rhodes Scholars was an important aspect of it. If you ask Rhodes Scholars about this, they'll say, well, Cecil Rhodes may have entertained the idea of a massive global conspiracy, but then he just decided to give some young fellas and later women some money so they could improve their education. But the people closest to him, William Stead and others, acknowledged that the Rhodes Scholars were chosen for particular characteristics that they have. You mentioned pragmatists, so you'll have George Stephanopoulos, very prominent now with ABC television. Back some years ago when he was asked, well, what happens if there's a conflict between the political situation or issue and your morality? And Stephanopoulos says, well, I'll compromise. This is the sort of pragmatist that they want. And there's a certain amount of conditioning that goes on at Oxford of these people. Now, ultimately, a few have not fulfilled their dream. They have remained patriotic nationalists, but most of them have this sort of a globalist bent to them. And I have a letter signed by Bill Clinton supporting world government, and his Rhodes Scholar roommate, Strobe Talbot, won an award from the World Federalist Association for an article he wrote in Time magazine that said perhaps national sovereignty was not such a great idea after all, and the case for world government is clinched. But the importance of Rhodes Scholars in these various key positions over the years is what a term I heard when I was in Washington working, and that is personnel is policy. And the reason for that is, if you look at a George W. Bush or Barack Obama or almost any of these people, they're heavily, heavily reliant upon the people around them, not only for the advice and information they are given, but for the advice and information withheld from them. And so you have them pretty well beholden to these individuals around them. And that's why you'll see, regardless of administration, the same sort of people popping up. Whether it's an Obama or a Bush or whatever. You had in the last election John McCain. Well, a key foreign policy advisor for him was Henry Kissinger, one of the same people you've seen years and years. Barack Obama's was Zbigniew Brzezinski. He goes back decades. As both of them Rockefeller sort of associates. So administrations may come and go, but the people in control stay there. The same was true, as I mentioned before, about the Fabian Socialists, that they formed the London School of Economics and basically trained the bureaucrats so that prime ministers would come and go, but these bureaucrats would be in place forever. And if any of your listeners know about legislation, what happens is Congress, or it doesn't Parliament, whatever, will pass some sort of law. But what actually gets enacted is the rules and regulations. Let's say Congress passes an education bill, it goes to the Department of Education, then some bureaucrats write the rules and regulations to enforce that, to implement it. And oftentimes the legislator doesn't even recognize the bill that become law. And so a lot of things are driven by that. Graham Allison up at Harvard actually wrote about various models, the organizational model, the bureaucratic model for government, and so on. So that's one initiative.
We're back at Future Quake with Dr. Future.
And Tom, no middle name, Bionic.
Wow, that only happens on rare occasions. You're cheating your fans out there.
Yeah. I don't have any fans. Let's get right down to brass tacks.
Oh, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. Probably Dr. Cuddy's probably one of your top fans, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm one of his because he's just getting warmed up in this discussion. He's being patient as I do my regular, slovenly lay out the groundwork of the history of elite control of our world.
Well, I thought the whole thing that you had mentioned about Cecil Rhodes and Rhodesia being actually named after Cecil Rhodes was fascinating.
Yeah, he's the man of African imperialism and
evil.
British imperialism over the world.
That out loud?
Well, and really, to my knowledge, Dr. Cuddy, of the people I know, is the one who was at the forefront of gathering all the hard data. I don't know, Dr. Stan, I'm sure, has did his own research, probably used some of Dr. Cuddy's because he thinks highly of him. But his books are essential reading if you want to know what's really going on in the modern world, because Cecil Rhodes has probably had more influence on people in the last 200 years than maybe any man living. And his books will actually document that. And the legacy of the decision makers today are testimony. And we're talking about the true hidden agenda behind history's global conflicts. This is our second installment with him. It was much too brief. We really just got things warmed up and going, and we hope to have him back. But if you're not familiar with Dr. Cuddy, you need to listen very closely, and I highly recommend you chase down his books at Amazon.com. Read his articles at News with Views. You will thank me later for it, because he is a fascinating, very careful researcher, documents everything very well, and what he finds is more fantastic than what you'll read at these crazy sites, like ours, for example.
Yeah, you know what I find? Well, we should probably go to him, I guess, huh?
For lack of anything else, get the words directly from Dr. Cuddy. So here's Dr. Cuddy talking about this hidden agenda behind history's global conflicts, and we'll be back to wrap it up here at Future Quake.
Another initiative would be we get our information, the public does, through the press and media. And so one of the aspects of Cecil Rhodes that wanted to control was journalism. And so they took over, according to Professor Quigley, 5 major papers: New York Times, Christian Science Monitor, Boston Globe, so on. And in addition, their ally, the money person in this country helping them here, was J.P. Morgan. And Morgan and his people thought originally that they would buy up about 200 newspapers and control the press, but then they figured out that all they really had to do was buy up about 25 major newspapers, and they would select the editors, and then the editor-in-chief would select the people under him, and they would pretty much toe the mark editorial. They'd either promote war or be against war or whatever it is. And so that way you could control what the public knows, the information that it gets upon which they base their decisions.
Is just lemmings within journalism. If they see the big guys, how dare they go against the path, and they're going to write about the same things as monkey see, monkey do. And so they just have to get a critical mass in each of these groups.
The school shootings was an example. I think one of those some years ago was in Jonesboro, Arkansas, or wherever. But what happened was there was about 900 newspaper articles on that event. And only, I think, about 11 of them actually said what really happened, and that was when the school shooter was shooting his fellow students. I think the assistant principal went out to his car, got his gun, came in, pointed it at the child, and said, "Drop your gun or else." Only 11 of the 900 papers put that. The other 889 just said the child was shooting up the school, and he was stopped, and that was it. Now, obviously, the power elite didn't call up 889 editors, and the point is they didn't have to. Those individuals are selected in advance for their worldview, probably for gun control. Often they're very liberal, the editors, and therefore they would be for gun control. And so when you put, as I said, personnel as policy, when you put key people in key positions, you don't have to have a secret society meeting at midnight or every other Tuesday or whatever. It will just be a natural inclination on their part to go along with this.
Well, now, as I understand from your books, to let our listeners in on your approach, after you disclose their writing, which talks about the Rhodes Scholar program being one of their many initiatives to try to proliferate people of like mind in all the key decision making,